we'll need to call this meeting into order. Is someone going to do a roll call, Nate?
Yes, you would. I'll do the roll call. Luke Lundberg. Councilor Van Gordon.
Here.
George Jesse.
Here.
Councilor Moe.
Here.
Corey Rodley.
Here.
Councilor Moore. Gabriela Guidero.
I believe you just called my name and I am here.
Councilor Stair.
Here.
Holly Bauer Shaper.
Here.
Councilor Woodrow.
Here.
Paul Selby.
Here.
Councilor Pictionary.
I'm present.
And I will go back to Luke Lundberg. I see Luke on the panel, but no audio at the moment. And then I'll also ask for Councilor Moore again. I do not see Councilor Moore on the call. Oh, I see her as an attendee, so let me make her a panelist real quick here. Councilor Moore.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Slight issues here.
I might mention, Councilor Moe, your camera is still on. You might want to turn that off when we get to the question period.
Okay. I'm off.
Okay, are we ready to go, Nate?
It all depends on whether you want to give a few more minutes for Luke to get his audio figured out.
Oh, sure, let's do that. In fact, I need to grab my phone real quick. I'll be right back.
I could probably mention to Luke, if you can hear me, for my audio, when I've had problems with it, I go into the audio section, I hit no audio, and then I put computer audio back on, and a lot of times that'll resolve the issue for me. It looks like Luke is there. Luke, can you hear us?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I might try a call in, but I'm here and I'm listening, so.
All right, Chair Pictionary, that's everybody.
Okay, so if you can get us to the spot where we left off, pick us up from there.
So where we left off, Councilor Pictionary, is at item D, questions and discussion on the budget, which is really just questions for the department heads. And I think we had made it through about 4 of the departments, right, and I think there were some additional questions still.
Right, we have, and the 4 we went through was the city manager's office, and I think it was police and human resources, is that right?
Yep, HR and finance.
Yeah, and finance. So the next one's up would be, and I think that would be up to the panelists when they have questions. I don't know if we're going in any certain order.
When we cut it off originally, there were questions for DPW, and we were talking about bringing all three of those individuals up, if those questions still exist.
Oh, that's correct. Thank you. Seems like it's been a month since our last meeting.
Feels that way.
So I think there was some DPW questions. George, did you have a question?
Yeah, I think I was just starting to ask a couple of questions for Public Works. And the first one, if we're ready, is reference on page 13 of 18 on Public Works summary. And I was questioning the need for 2 additional communications coordinators, going from 1 to 3.
Can't hear you, Nate.
Oh, there you go.
So let's see.
Were you able to hear my questions?
Yes,
Okay.
Mr. Jesse, I'm
Interesting
waiting.
pictures on here.
Yeah, some cute pictures. Who is that?
Green, I don't know.
That's Matt and his wife.
Yeah. So he's one of my colleagues in Development and Public Works, quite an outdoorsman. Matt, if you can either get your vocal on and/or your camera, maybe you could kick off the answer.
Yeah, can you hear me? There we go. It took a while for my webcam to come up. I'm not seeing the pages being referred to. However, the department did a reorganization last year, and there were 3 communications coordinators within the department, 2 of which reside in the Metropolitan Wastewater Management Commission's budget and 1 for the department. And all 3 of those positions are housed in environmental services currently. That was not the case last year. They reported to the office of the director, which doesn't exist at this time. And so the number of positions has remained level with respect to last year, although their reporting structure has changed.
And if I could add a bit of explanation to that. So the MWMC, the Metro Wastewater Management Commission, which Matt is the general manager of, passes its capital program. In fact, I think all of its budget passes through the city's budget. And correct me on that, but that MWMC commission has 2 of those positions, and then the balance, the 3rd position, is a position that community development and operations share, with a little bit of that time still in environmental services, which is on the city side, the local side, as opposed to the regional wastewater side.
Okay, that answers that. I guess the overall point, I was just looking at some of the costs and what has been completed specifically in the area of street and road maintenance. It seems like we haven't got much bang for the buck in recent years. And I just hate to see, I wasn't sure if some of that was going out of the road fund. I looked at I think one of the projects I reviewed from last year, it looked like 37% of the money was on administration, paving the roads on Commercial and F
Getting
Street.
some interference here. I don't know if the rest of you can hear that.
It's
There you go.
So that's better. Well, I mean, we live in an information age, and we interact with our customers vis-a-vis information, quite a bit of it. For example, the street bond, first annual street bond report that was provided to council with Monday's packet is an effort that our communications specialist took a hold of and championed, brought forward for publishing. All of our website and web information flow back and forth is managed there. And really, and Mr. Conlon can talk about this, especially on the infrastructure side, just helping the community understand what the volume and the complexities of our infrastructure systems are is quite helpful. Every project we do has a communications plan that goes with it, especially the long-range planning projects like the Main Street Safety Project and the Development Code rewrite.
I guess what I'd add, Mr. Jesse, too, is for some time now, we've had less dollars that we've been able to spend towards rehabilitation or preventive maintenance. Preventive maintenance is our goal. One exciting piece that we shared in February, and in my presentation I mentioned, is that infrastructure systems needs report that we went to council with in February. The council approved us hiring some staff to get after back out on the streets. We're hopeful actually by the 26th of May, that might be pushing it a bit, is being out doing crack seal work and grinding and inlay work on the operations maintenance side of things. So, and then that paired with the bond projects, we hope to follow up with slurry seal projects next summer and potentially in October, but it looks like we're probably leaning towards next summer, especially with the COVID environment to get at that. But I would align with what your statement is, but I'm pretty excited. I get pretty jacked up, frankly, about our opportunity to be able to get out and start showing citizens what we can do for one, but that our roads and streets matter.
Okay, I look forward to seeing that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Gabriella.
Hi. I remember something that came up last year during budget committee was 42nd Street beyond IP. I know that 42nd towards Main is covered by the street bond, but I believe there was a jurisdictional change that was happening. What happened with that?
So we're continuing to work on that. 12 million, well, effectively $12 million was legislated in the House Bill 2017, the big state street fund package. The money was set to transfer to the city in 2023. We've been negotiating with ODOT to advance that money. But at the first meeting I went to, they said, in order to get the money, you must take Pioneer Parkways east and west from Main Street to the freeway. So we're in this conversation. There is a council communication packet, I think from 2 or 3 weeks ago, that just outlines ODOT's position is that the legislative intent is that to get 12 million, we have to take over this double one-way couplet facility and improve it to ADA standards, even though it's a named project in ODOT's ADA lawsuit settlement. And do some surface preservation work. So that's in the neighborhood of $2 million. And as we've looked at, and the city attorney's office has looked at the bill, the written word in the legislation of House Bill 2017, it does not tie those two things together. But it's pretty clear that ODOT's holding the line on that. And so these next 5 or 6 months are our time to get to yes with them. Negotiate the best deal we can and move on. And then we would go into project development and then ultimately deliver an improvement project on 42nd north of the IP entrance.
Okay, well, thanks for the answer, even though it's not what I was hoping to hear.
Sorry.
Hey, Councilor Piscineri, when we were ending last week, Councilor Moore had a question about the regional fuel facility and price indexing, wondering what kind of deal we were getting, and I thought I'd share it because it's really, really good news. Over the last year, we averaged, because we rely on the school district's pricing. They're actually they're in the lead in procurement. Over the last year, we've averaged about $1.72 a gallon we pay for unleaded, which really helps out on the police side of things. They burn up a lot of unleaded fuel with those interceptors, and $1.56 on the diesel side. That's our average. We're currently paying $1.12 a gallon for unleaded and $1.29 a gallon for diesel.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, good job on that, Brian. That's good news. Was there any other questions from the committee in regards to the DPW?
I have a question about the capital reserve, replacement reserve fund, the 400,000 that we're looking at. What I'm looking at is page 24 of 27, which is the highlights of the budget additions. Apparently this was in last year's budget as well. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so this was in last year's budget as well. And so I did talk to Neil earlier today about that and wondered if there might be another way we could come up with that replacement reserve rather than out of the general fund. What I'm understanding is that we're looking at all of these items that we are committing them for the fiscal year 21 budget. So rather than committing that 400,000, if we could look at putting it on hold and seeing if there are other ways that we could come up with the money, and that I guess I need to ask DPW that question.
Actually, if you don't mind, I'm going to step in at this point because DPW actually didn't program those dollars while they're in the capital project fund. That came from the budget team, and we're definitely open to that conversation. If you don't mind, Councilor Moore, that would be a city budget deliberation conversation.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you.
So I had a question about fuel again.
And I have Sean.
So could you, like, the prices look really good. Have you guys made maybe any progress to see if we can't lock in that price through a futures contract for, I don't know if it's a year or like, because that could really do bake in a bunch of fuel savings that we need.
So we could do that. We'd have to rework the IGA with the school district, the current IGA. I think at its highest point generally, and we keep an eye on it. I think I've seen it as high as $3.50 a gallon at one point. So I see where you're coming from, but this was probably about 4 or 5 years ago. But over the last 2 or 3 year cycle, the school district is getting such phenomenal pricing. We haven't sought the need to lock. We're due to meet with the partners, overdue to meet with the partners, frankly, and we have to meet with them next month in regard with a fuel tank that we're replacing. So I could bring that up.
I would definitely appreciate it. In like and again, I don't know what's available on the open market. I know that like if there's contracts to lock in where fuel is right now for 3 years, that may make a lot of sense. If you can only lock it in for 6 months, it may not be worth pursuing. But I do know that companies like Southwest that had a really good competitive advantage maybe 10 years ago, they took advantage and signed a long-term deal for fuel that helped them, their bottom line quite a bit.
So to be clear, you're talking about futures pricing and the possibility of locking. So I can check into that.
Yeah. The challenge is like storage, right? Because we don't have a bunch of places to put it. But if there's an available contract that says, hey, you keep delivering X amount of gallons every week until this contract's done, it could make a lot of sense.
Okay.
Do we have any more questions from the committee? Was that someone trying to ask a question? Okay, so I have a maybe not necessarily directly towards DPW, but also involving DPW. And I've been looking through the budget areas, and I was trying to locate where the different departments have plans to purchase new vehicles. And I didn't know if DPW has those plans, or even the PD or Fire and Life Safety. And I just wanted to at least approach the subject in regards to the need to dump that kind of money in this year, when if we could potentially push back purchases of vehicles for the 1 year.
So you brought this up, I think, in one of the council meetings a month or so ago. So we have in the budget currently, Councilor Pictionary, approximately, and this comes from operations, 251,000. There are 7 vehicles, or excuse me, 3 pickups, a van, 1 SUV, and then excavator, and also a forklift. We went over that list, and we feel like there's probably 3 of those things that we would strongly recommend purchasing, but they are still in the budget. It's your budget. If you see fit not to purchase those, we can get along without them. They've just been deferred for quite a few years. They're not of significant value now for trade. So if it's your recommendation to remove those, we can. There's an excavator we'd like to get, and that excavator is a $70,000 out of that 255. That would be very helpful for the initiatives with the bioswale maintenance, and also on the wastewater crew and stormwater crew excavations.
Thank you, Brian. I think, I agree as far as like the excavators being a part of the working tools and needing to be of good quality, et cetera. I'm just looking at vehicles that are, and not just DPW, but the PD, Fire and Life Safety, all of the departments looking at their vehicles and pushing off or pushing back those vehicles, at least just for this year. So that way we will have some money in the bank somewhere, that in case the need arises, where we would have to move some money around mid-year, that we would have some place to take it instead of so much from the reserves. But I'm not necessarily advocating not getting those. I'm just saying that we really just overall need to look at pushing back where we can on those. And I think that if there's some specific needs that arise mid-year, that could be done through a supplemental.
Okay. I will say of those 7 pieces of equipment, none were contributed to or will be purchased from general fund monies. But that said, it's still, we follow you. I can talk with the budget team. Is that what your direction is, a little bit further about them?
Right. Mostly through ET, I suppose, and that if there's some savings that can be found, not necessarily even a budget committee topic, but something that through just management through the city, that we can push those back and not have to put all those up front right away until we see where where we come out at the end of the tunnel.
Okay, I took a note. Thank you.
All right. Sherry, welcome.
Well, I've been here all along. It's just that I had to figure out the camera.
So do you have a question?
Oh, well, apparently most of my questions will come under the deliberations, because other than I had a question for the library, but not under DPW. So I guess at this point in time, I'll wait until deliberations.
Okay, well, we'll bring that up. We'll go through by department right now, and I think that the library hadn't had a chance for us to ask the library folks questions yet. But is there any more questions for DPW from the committee? Okay, Oh, here we go, George.
I just have one quick follow-up on that vehicle equipment fund. Under Public Works, page 9 of 18, it's got a financial summary by fund. Is Fund 713 Vehicle and Equipment Fund, the line items there, equipment replacement monies?
Yes,
Okay.
vehicles and equipment.
Yeah, it looks like the biggest dollar amount is actually the amended fiscal year 20 budget of 2.1 million. So if there was any savings there, it might be something to look at for the council. That's all I had, just a comment on it.
I guess my comment would be, you're correct. In this current fiscal year, we've made purchases of about 20. The history behind it is we deferred for about 3, 4, 5 years. And so we were granted to go forward in the current budget year and purchase, and we have done pretty well. They're currently, we're waiting on some pickups and a couple dump trucks. We pretty much purchased the inspector fleet and pickups for DPW engineering community development. So I can check into Mr. Jesse into seeing what the residual will be in the end of that. I want to say it's closer to 1.5, that there's about 500,000 possibly there, but I can't, I'm just throwing that number out of memory. But
well, I'm actually an advocate for replacing them at the time you plan for it, because my history tells me those vehicles never get cheaper. They always get more expensive the longer you delay them. So if you've got them budgeted, unless there's really not a need for them, which I assume there is, I'd go ahead and get them.
right, and Nathan could probably speak to the condition of the 713 vehicle reserve.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so is there any more questions for DPW? All right, seeing none. Nate, do we have any more departments? I think there was mention of the library.
Yeah, we've got 4 departments left. We have the library, IT, and we actually have CMO still. We never covered them last week, and the city attorney's office. So
Okay.
For those 4 departments.
So let's go ahead and is there a semblance of order somewhere with those? Is there a lineup with those, or just go ahead and pick one out?
We could just pick one. Why don't we start with the library? Any questions for the library?
Sounds good.
Okay, so I have a question.
Go ahead and get your camera up, and we'll take your
I
question.
have to figure that out. This
Okay.
is
And if you can wait for Emily to come up as well.
okay.
Go ahead with your question, Sherry.
Oh, okay. I thought I was waiting for Emily.
There she is.
Oh, yes. Hi, Emily. Wow, and you have books behind you. So appropriate.
I'm at the library.
Oh, well, there you go. I just had a question about the added FTE, halftime FTE for 22,000, and it looks like it comes out of the general fund and also out of your gift and memorial fund. And so if you could just explain that proposal for me.
So in the original budget, we were going to split that 0.5 addition between the general fund and the library gift and memorial fund. But on consideration after the current events, we've decided to move all of that into the general fund. So we will be paying for that 0.5 position out of the library's, we've decided to move it all into the gift and memorial fund. So
Okay.
Sorry, I went the wrong way there. So the library will be paying for that additional 0.5 out of our gift and memorial funding. So is that what you were asking?
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. And so you're, so as I'm looking at that additions, that would no longer be an addition to the general budget then, general
Right.
fund budget.
Right. It'll all
Okay.
come out of our gift and memorial.
All right. Well, thank you. That's what I needed to know. I didn't want to not have it, but on the other hand, we're trying to stay where we can. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
This might be a good time to mention too that we're going to need someone to bring up a motion for, in addition to the errata, when we get to that point, for the library, because as it now stands, that quarter FTE is still in the general fund, and we'll need someone to make a motion to pay for that full half FTE out of the special revenue fund.
Sean, did you note that?
Yes, I can do that.
Or Sherry? Okay. I had a follow-up question to that, Emily, if I could. So
Yes.
that position, it indicates duration is a one-time thing through the Gift and Memorial Fund. So this isn't a position that is being created with the Memorial Fund and then next year coming back as a permanent position, or what?
So we're really looking at it year by year right now. It's been a 0.5 position, and over a 3-year period, we hired for that position 3 different times. It just was hard to keep somebody in the 0.5. So we made a decision in December of this last year to use Gift and Memorial to make it a full-time position. And so we want to continue that. We need the extra staffing in the library, and so we have made the decision to do it for this next fiscal year as well, for FY21. And so next year we'll look at it again and see if it's needed again.
So that will come up and so when we look at the FTE positions, it would be considered an add-on position at that time if you're looking for that in a permanent basis. Is that correct?
Right. So if if there was the potential to have it come out of the general fund, we would submit a paper to request that. It would go through that process. If it passed through that process, it would come to the budget committee to decide.
And so was that position being half-time, literally half-time, and so was that person receiving full benefits as benefits and fringe as a city employee full-time?
So as a part-time employee, they were receiving part-time benefits, and so the full package, the full additional 0.5, all comes out of Gift and Memorial. So the additional benefits also come out of our Gift and Memorial Fund. So they do, since it is increased to a full-time position, they do now qualify for full-time benefits, but that's all coming out of the Gift and Memorial.
Just a correction, this individual was receiving full-time benefits. At halftime, he was receiving full-time benefits. So it's just the additional salary to bring him up to full-time. So it's not as expensive as the first half FTE to accomplish that. Just for that clarification.
Thanks, Nate.
You're welcome.
Okay, so this position will come up at a later conversation in another budget meeting next year.
Most likely it could come up next year. We do need the staffing in the library, so it'll be a decision each year at this point, since it's not a permanent position, as to whether it's something that we could add to the general fund or if we continue to fund it from the Gift and Memorial Fund.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Does anyone else on the committee have any questions for the library? Okay, sounds good.
Thank you.
Emily.
Thank you.
Nate, what's our next department?
Let's do IT next.
Okay. Meeting, bringing up Brent.
I'm bringing up Brant now.
Okay.
And do you get rid of me, Neil, or do I get rid of me?
Emily, if you want to drop off, and then, yep, thank you.
Okay.
Good evening, Brent. I think you're still on mute. Still muted.
Has an organizer muted him, Neil?
He's self-muted at the moment.
Okay. Brent, maybe pull out your headset.
Still nothing.
There we go. Brant, we should be able to hear you.
I think I.
Yep.
And can you hear me? Okay, great. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Good evening.
Brant, we're so happy to see the IT person having some difficulty.
Oh, I do every day. Yes. So.
Okay, has everybody had a chance to go through IT? And have you got any questions for IT?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Sherry. Go ahead and bring your camera up. There you go.
So looking at our website, I don't see anything in the budget for the improvements to the, is there some money there for continued improvements to our city website?
That's a great question. The actual funding for the website doesn't come out of the IT budget. But I know there's been a lot of work. We help coordinate and make sure services are available. And when there's questions and escalation, we'll help deal with those. But I think that's funded through the CMO budget. I'd have to check with them. I'm not sure what's budgeted next year for that. I do believe they have a contract that's continuing on. LCOG does a lot of that maintenance for the city. And so, and I know LCOG's got a new developer, so they're ready to help with that. So that's what I know about that topic.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. Does anyone else on the committee have any questions for our IT manager, director? Well, looks like you're getting off easy tonight, Brant.
Uh-oh. Well, should you have any questions, please send them and we'll get answers back to you as soon as possible.
Thank you very much, Brant.
Thank you.
Okay, Nate, what's our next one?
I'll tell you what, we got CMO and CAO. Let's only bring them up if there's questions for them, since it takes a little time to do that.
Yes. So do we have any questions for the city manager's office?
So yes.
Sherry, we have one for Sherry. So let's go ahead and bring the city manager office up.
Hi. Boy, too fun.
Hello, Counselor.
So question, I do have a question about that our web site. And, you know, is there ongoing costs? I know if we have the contract with LCOG, is that something that I have to find your budget, but you could maybe just answer the question without me finding it.
You bet, Councilor Moore. Yes, it is in our office that goes through our community relations. And Amber Fossen, our PIO for the city, manages that through a contract with LCOG.
So is there a lot of ongoing expense? Is that something that we just was an initial expense, but we do have an ongoing expense for it?
We do have an ongoing expense for web maintenance. We do not have a specific webmaster at the city. Amber coordinates that contract with LCOG, and LCOG serves as the webmaster for the city. So it reduces our costs. We don't have a full staff member that works simply on the website. And we are always updating and looking for the next phase of website work to make sure the site itself is usable.
So it says phase 2. What is phase 2? What does that involve?
Yeah, so phase 2 is kind of the next phase of I don't have all of the details of exactly what phase 2 will look like off the top of my head, but it is that next phase of usability, of accessibility for the website to make it more usable for the community members. What we got the first year was a wholly different site than what we had, much better, but it's still not quite where we wanted as far as usability, and so phase 2 takes that next step into usability.
Okay. So while I've got you, I'll just go on to my other question. It has to do with that 200,000 for the Olympic trials coming out of the room tax, or is that coming out of the general fund?
The 200,000 is out of room tax.
Is that in your budget then, or is that?
That is in our budget, yes. It's in the TRT section.
Okay, maybe that's my problem. I'm not looking at the right section. So my question just has to do with the fact that my understanding is we're appropriating funds this year for the 2021 budget. And so is there a way in which we could not appropriate the funds and yet, because what I see is the TRT funding is going to drop dramatically, maybe almost to non-existence. So is there a way to maintain that money without appropriating it to the Olympic trials at this point in time? And again, this is probably when we're having the discussion, deliberation, but I just want your take on that 200,000 that we're looking at.
Councillor, that's an excellent question. The Olympic trials funding is in the council, mayor and council line item. And correct me if I'm wrong, Nate, I think we do have a contract, but if council would like, and the budget committee would like to discuss a deferment, that would be a discussion for the mayor and council and the budget committee.
Yes, Councillor Moore, that's a commitment that you made and that we're following through on. That is not our discretion. It's your discretion. I want to be very clear on that.
Okay. So at this point in time, it is in the budget. We are appropriating the funds then.
Following your lead, yes.
Right. Okay. So in order to change that at this point in time, since we're going to, I assume, approve the budget tonight, is it too late for us to defer that at this point in time? You know, for the council and mayor to defer that money?
Well, I think Neil brought up a good point that we'd have to look at the contract, but as far as the budget's concerned, nothing's too late. It's our job to put forward a balanced budget, and then it's up for you to either move that budget forward or make changes that you deem necessary. So at this point, nothing is too late. But then that may have a question of a contract.
Okay, thank you.
And Councillor, don't mean to interrupt, but I was reminded that the contract, the item was approved through regular session. It did have public comment, so just something to keep in mind.
Okay. Okay, so then the only other issue I had with the city manager's office was the 25,000 that I had asked about that was to the chamber. I asked about that last week and saw a copy. Thank you very much for whoever got that contract out to us. But I was told last week that it was a 3-year contract. It appears to me that it is only a 1-year contract so that we would need to renew it. Well, by appropriating the funds, the 25,000, we would be renewing the contract with the chamber for this 25,000 to pay for half of the cost for a individual to work on. Well, when I read the contract, it says facilitate the indoor track. And so is that just something I need to bring up in deliberations, or am I correct in saying that it was a 1-year contract that we would need to, am I correct in that?
Yep.
Okay.
You are correct.
Councilor, it was a 1-year contract, and that is something that you can certainly bring up in deliberations with your colleagues, as right now it's currently budgeted to continue.
Okay, all right. That's all my questions then. Thank you.
Sean, go ahead.
Just asking a question, a clarifying question about TRT funds. Those funds can only really be used for heads and beds, right? It's for economic development and events. Like, let's just hypothetically say the Olympic trials.
Correct, Councillor. It's been the priority of the council to really push to use those specifically for those items, and our economic development staff have done incredibly hard work to keep that there. Even in the legislature, the priority for the council has been to keep that money on those priorities and not extend the use to something else.
And in our experience, historically, when we talk about funding those big track events, our businesses benefit from those by essentially bringing tourism into town. Is that a fair assessment?
That's fair, Counselor. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. And I just wanted to, I guess I wanted to confirm the fact that that action was a council action that was voted upon during a council meeting. And so and Nate, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong in regards to I'm going back to the TRT funds for the Olympic trials, that to change something like that, that would take a council action, correct? Not just going through. It sounded like you said that the budget committee can go through and change a council action. I don't know if that's correct, is it?
No, the budget committee is a recommending committee. So what they'll do is they'll put forward a budget, and this is something I think I was going to clarify in the deliberation process. There's always the possibility that something could get put forward or pulled out by the budget committee and its recommendation to the council. But when it comes to the council, that will also be a public process, and they have the discretion to add back or remove anything they so choose. Ultimately, okay, the council is the responsible decision-making body.
That was my understanding too. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. As long as everybody understands that, that's important. Okay. Any more questions for the city manager's office? All right. And the city attorney's office is next, I assume.
Last one, yes.
Does anyone have any questions for the city attorney's office? I guess they are off the hook. So is that the last of the departments, Nate?
Yes, that would be it for the department questions, and that brings us to business from the audience.
All right, so I'm going to close the questions, discussions to the department heads, and we'll now go straight to the business from the audience. Is there anyone from the public that wish to make comment?
Joe, could we go over maybe the process for people that are on the phone if they want to make a comment?
Yeah, and I think Neil has a script for them, if we have any.
Yeah, Neil will be handling that. He'll pop up here, I believe, in a second.
Okay.
So Chair, for any members of the public who wish to speak, for those that are on the call, they can use the raise your hand function. When they do that, that will indicate to the organizers that we have folks that want to provide comment. I will go down the list and will unmute individuals sequentially, and I'll indicate their name to you, Chair, and you'll ask them to provide their name and address for the record and limit their comments to 3 minutes. So when you're ready, I can then to review the list of individuals that want to provide comment and go down the list.
Okay, go ahead.
Chair, the first individual's name is James Hugo, and I'm unmuting them now.
Okay. And if you got a timer, yes, I can hear you. Please state your name and your mailing address for the record, and you'll be welcome to make your comments. We limit your comments to 3 minutes or less.
My name is James Hugo. I live at 5217 F Street, as in Frank, 97478. So my main concern why I got on here tonight is I've noticed a lot of high activity of like small petty crime around our town since this COVID-19 thing and the kids being out of school. And I think I didn't hear anybody talking about any like police like making more money happen for the cops to have more officers and more patrols on the streets at night. and I was wondering how we go about doing that. And I don't know if this is the right forum for that, or I just figured I'd just put that out there because we need some more police on the streets. I think 6 officers in a day or whatever at a time is just, I think, a little kind of allowing criminals to have their way with our town. So I think we need to do something about that as a community, to find the money for it at least. So that's kind of why I'm on here. And then I guess I have a few more minute or so. I unfortunately was a victim of falling down on one of the sidewalks that need to be maintained. And since I'm not a homeowner and I'm a renter, I'm on the disabled low-income bracket here in our community. It's been really hard to get anybody to pay attention to that. And I've been trying to get these sidewalks worked on, fixed for a couple years now. And unfortunately falling down on the sidewalk and it being at a real interesting area where it's kind of questionable if it's a property owner's responsibility or if it's sub's responsibility or if it's the city's responsibility. So yeah, my neighborhood definitely needs to get looked at. We had this guy Ben come out to our neighborhood from the department, Public Works, I think, and taking pictures. And then there's this abandoned house right next to our house on 52nd Street that's owned by Jack's towing guy, Mr. Dareth. And he has a bunch of properties that are really, really disgusting, and that needs to get looked at too. I know that's probably a city council issue, but yeah. So all right, that's all I'm done. Thank you for your time. I appreciate y'all taking the time to do what you're doing, and have a good night.
We really appreciate your comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe.
All right.
Figure out how to unmute myself here.
We'll take care of that.
Chair, the next individual from the public is Chris McAllister. I'm unmuting him now.
Okay.
Thank you, Budget Committee. My name is Chris McAllister. I live at 1909 12th Street, Springfield, Oregon, 97477. I appreciate this opportunity to address this body as you make a tough deliberation as we spend our resources in the best way possible. I just have a couple items that I'd like to bring up. One is I'd like to show support for the budget to allocate for body cams for our police officers. We need to protect and serve both our officers and our community. And according to a report by the Police Executive Research Forum, that found that there are multiple ways to better utilize cams to protect the fiscal and public interest. And so I think that this should be a priority on allocations over the possible $100,000 used for sites, guns, and I believe there was another item being presented. But I really feel like this would be a best practice to protect our people. It would allow people who are underserved in our community to be able to have another rope to be supported in interactions, because we find that underserved people tend to bear the brunt of enforcement and policing activities. We also want to make sure that our officers are given the benefit of the doubt to be able to protect their ability to serve us. We have a slightly higher rate of use of force, as well as a little bit more of an increase of police interactions leading to arrest. And so I want to make sure that we have fewer options for fatalities. And I feel like the cams, in addition to not having extra guns on the streets, even if they're ours, would help mitigate some of that. I also wanted to speak to the point that some things are spending under council direction or consideration, whilst others are required by ordinance or law. And I was wondering if there's a list where it's itemized about what is choice versus what is required, so that way we, the public, can better understand what is a council decision and what is the law. I would really like to figure out how to better incorporate people into this process who need to use English as a second language, and also people who are hearing and visually impaired, because being online and on the computers are not necessarily accessible for people in those situations. Thank you very much for your time and your service, and I look forward to seeing how this budget process continues on.
Thank you, Chris. Do we have any more speakers?
Yes, we have Jesse Lynn, and I'm unmuting them now.
Okay. Hello, are you there, Jesse? Hello?
Okay, can
Jesse?
you hear me now?
Yes, you can. Please
All
state
right,
your name
perfect.
and please state your name and address, and limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. And you've got the floor.
All right, my name's Jessie Preston. I live at 5217 F Street out in the Thurston area. My concern is with the COVID-19 going on right now, that I see our officers are out there without masks. This is both a safety issue for them, their families, and for the citizens that they're interacting with. I have called the police to report some crime that's been going on in my neighborhood, which has prompted police responding to my house to get more information from me. But they show up with no mask on. I have a disabled son that if he gets exposed to this disease is at increased risk of having severe complications from it. And as much as I appreciate the police officers taking their time to come out and gather more information from me, I feel like I am putting my son at risk because I'm trying to prevent crime in our neighborhood. And I think that I would feel a lot safer if it was either switched, that the protocol would be to call people to get more information or to give officers masks. And I think that the larger benefit would be to allocate money to give the officers masks because it protects them and their families as well. That's really all I have to say. So I'll go on ahead and hand it back over with time remaining. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. And do we have any more, Neil?
I'm double checking the list right now, but it does not look as though we have any other individuals with their hands raised. Chair, I'll also note that we received several written public comments, and those were emailed to the Budget Committee yesterday evening. And actually, I see one more here, Martha Alvarado, and I'm unmuting them now.
Okay, thank you. Martha, are you here? Hello, Martha, are you here? Hello, Martha, are you here? Neil, do you show her unmuted?
She does appear to be unmuted.
Martha, if you can hear me, be sure to check your device to see it is unmuted. Martha, are you there? Okay, Neil, we will, I think we're going to have to move on unless we hear from her, but
Chair, I'll provide Martha with a message on the side and see if we can't get that resolved.
That would be fine. Thank you. Appreciate that. Sean, go ahead.
So a quick question, Joe, because I got a text message from somebody that was dialed in, but maybe not on the webinar. Is there a way that they're supposed to be raising their hand to get to testify? So they're not on the, or they have to be on the webinar to testify, to provide comment?
Gordon, yeah, you have to be on the webinar in order to provide testimony. If they're called in without logging into the software, it's in listen only mode.
So my guess is the best opportunity would be for them to simply just write into City Council, because we'll see this in a couple weeks anyway. Okay.
And I just want to also confirm that did all the committee members get the email from Neil in regards to the written testimony that was sent in last night? Anybody not get them, I should say. Good. Okay, what do we have next, Nate?
Just let me double check. Neil, are we completely done? Anyone physically show up to City Hall?
There's no one physically here.
All right, that moves us up to the city budget deliberation and approval. And I'm up first.
Okay, go for it, Nate.
All right. Since I haven't had a chance to introduce myself, I'm Nathan Bell. I'm the city's finance director. And we're at the point of budget deliberation and motions. Essentially, we're going to bring up an Excel spreadsheet, which is going to be our errata summary. And this is used to track any changes that you want to make. Typically, we bring up a blank sheet. This year, it's going to be pre-populated with one item from MWMC, their governing body, put forward a change they wanted to make in regards to holding their rates flat. So the errata will show that, but otherwise it's there for anything you want to add. Additionally, how we'd like to approach this is for any item to make it onto the errata, we would like a motion, and then it will take 6 additional approvals. So we will need 7 positive votes for anything to make it onto the errata. When we get to the motions, we'll have a motion for moving this budget forward to City Council for adoption. And within that motion, it includes language to include any changes that were summarized in the errata. As far as motions go, and this is something I want to be clear with everyone, each and every one of you has the authority to make any motion, to make any change to this budget that you think is necessary. So it's not something where it's a question of, are we able to do this? You pretty much can do most anything. But again, it's going to require a positive vote of at least 7 members for it to move forward. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to you, Councilor Pictionary.
Okay,
Joe?
thank you very much. Yes.
When you're ready, I want to speak.
Okay. Okay. Well, oh, that's right, because you don't have cameras. So we'll go ahead and go with you first, Mary Lee, and then we'll have the opportunities for other people to pop in with their camera.
Okay. The first thing I had was a question to probably DPW or Aaron. I don't know if Aaron or Sandy are available, but on the square one, what they had set up for that 60,000 for square one, I couldn't exactly tell if they were considering it for this year or if they were putting it forward for next year from CDBG. I couldn't tell.
Neil, are either Sandy or Aaron showing up as staff?
I'm pulling up the list here. I will. Sandy Belston is here. I'm moving her up for a panelist now.
I'm gonna drop down.
Sandy, are you there?
I hear some wrestling, but I'm not sure if it's her. There we are.
There she is. Hi, Sandy. This is Marilee. I have a question regarding the $60,000 that was listed for the Square One village thing, the project. I couldn't tell exactly if that 60,000 was being proposed for this year or if it was being listed out as CDBG possibility for next year. You're muted.
Yep.
Tap your microphone.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Councilor Woodrow, I'm not familiar with that item in the budget, the 60,000 for Square One Villages. I'm not sure what that's referring to, so I can't answer your question.
Okay, then we'll just place it on hold for the moment then, because I couldn't differentiate exactly what they were looking at for that. So that'll just be something that we'll set aside and deal with later, because it's not real clear. Okay, that was my that was my question for you, was regarding the Square One project. You might want to stay on that. I have a couple other things that I have to talk about where I'm not sure. Joe, I don't know. You want, Nate said he wants motions, but
Well,
I guess
think
include.
We want conversation as well, Councilor Woodrow.
Okay.
This is your opportunity to talk amongst yourselves and
Okay,
well,
I have three.
get it rolling.
I have three things I'll bring up, and then I'll go off and let everybody else talk.
Hey, Marilee,
Uh-huh.
I think maybe to help Sandra also is that I think you're talking about that Cultivate and Square One Villages proposed project by Dylan Lamar from
Yes.
from the organization Cultivate. And
Yes.
that was part of some documentation that came in, and I believe that's multiple pages of an ask, and that's separate from, I think, what we're doing as a city, but it's an outside ask.
Okay, so we're not going to deliberate over that tonight.
Well, I think we can. Isn't that correct, Nate?
Yes, you could. I think from probably his perspective, he doesn't care where the dollars come from. However,
Exactly.
this is something that could qualify for CDBG. So if you were to decide that you felt that there wasn't another a revenue source to fund something like this, this is something that you could open up to a possibility if there's extra CDBG dollars in the following year to fund it that way. So there's lots of different ways you could come at it.
Right,
Okay,
and that's,
well then.
And that's even if we wanted to. So.
Right. So I will voice my comments on that, saying that I like the idea of the project. I'm not completely sure of all the details, so it would be something I would like to defer to future discussion. And that's just my opinion on that. The list I have in front of me is the ask from the Emerald Art Center for the $12,000 for the repairs to the building. The senior meals program, I wanted to discuss that just a little bit. The senior meals program has had a need for many years. That goes all the way back to when I was on LCOG 5 years ago. And they continue to have a need. I was in HSC Executive Committee today, and they've done a poll of the different services in the county that they are working with. And one of the biggest issues right now in the middle of the COVID is food for every agency and the people that they're working with. So I would like to seriously consider the increase and the adding the extra route in Springfield for the senior meal program. And I would like to put that $40,000 on there. And the increase to HSC, I verified today, and it's open for discussion. But the one thing that I did verify today is that is for service completely. It has nothing to do with any admin fees. And it is to maintain the level of service that we offer now. It's basically just an increase in the cost of doing the same thing that we're doing at the moment. So those are the four things that I wanted to bring up, and then I will leave it for other people to discuss.
Okay, thank you, Marilee. Do we have any other folks for deliberation? I would like bring something up for discussion. I do know that we have staff that is, we were trying to get a hold of Martha, but it looks like she's not available, so she's gone. So is there any other members of the committee that would like to provide some input before we make some motions?
Councilor Pictionary, this is Councilor Stair. I wanted to ask, is there a mechanism in place that the city manager's office has to review contracts and budgeting that's unnecessary as a result of the pandemic now? And if not, is there possibility of instituting a regular review process for contracts for public events and public activities that are rendered invalid as a result of the pandemic? I'm thinking that in the future we might need it again.
I think that's a good comment and a good recommendation. I would hope that any of the activities that the city's involved in that is going to be curtailed or limited or taken off the burner, those contracts would necessarily need to be reviewed by the city attorney. Is that happening, Nancy? Or Neil? Neil,
Hang on just a minute. Sorry, I wanted to unmute myself. I think we're with the, are you talking about events that are permitted to occur prescriptively this summer that might be canceled? So what we were doing, I'm sorry, Councilor.
No, that's all right. I was thinking not only of events, but just reviewing staffing levels that might not be necessary as a result of the pandemic as well. I know we're operating a skeleton crew out of the city hall as it is, but I know that there are also departments that probably are enduring layoffs now, and I was wondering if it would be possible just to have a regular review process through the council.
Of those positions that might be occurring layoffs?
Yeah, that might be incurring layoffs and might be necessarily paring back their activities as well.
Okay. Certainly, that could be a discussion we could have with council, but I am not aware of any departments actively laying off staff at this point.
If you don't mind, I'll jump in here with you, Nancy. Councilor Stair, we actually have a budget team. It's made up of Nancy, myself, Neil Adati, Neil Obringer, and Mary Bridget Smith. And we meet weekly, and we are addressing these issues in each of these meetings. It's something that we're actively watching. At this point, again, we're still working on revenue projections and trying not to make any knee-jerk reactions. But I can assure you that it's something that we are looking at actively, and we'll make, I think, the necessary actions that we think are right. And we'll be bringing those in front of you at a later time.
All right, and that would go for all the activities that we have under contract right now that might not be necessary.
I would say nothing is off the table at this point.
Thank you.
Thank you, Leonard. I think we had, let's see, Sherry, I saw you jump in a little bit ago. Or yes. I'm sorry, George, then Sherry.
Go ahead, George.
Then Sherry. Mm-hmm.
Comment was made that MWMC had on the adjustment recommending no regional sewer rate increase for fiscal year 21. I was wondering if that had been looked at for the local sanitary and stormwater charges as well.
I would like to leave that question up to Matt. Are we able to bring Matt Stouter back up?
I'll bring Matt up here shortly.
Hi, yes, Commissioner Jesse, we have looked at that. And in fact, there's a public hearing with the City Council next Monday. And the staff recommendation based on council leadership's direction is going to be to pursue a 0% or a no increase this year.
Is that for the local sanitary and stormwater fees?
That's for both systems, yes.
Great, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, George. Thank you, Matt. And Sherry, go ahead.
Okay, so I had a question about the HSC additional 25,000 request. Is that what I'm looking at? Is it in addition to the budget, the 25,000?
Yes.
Okay, so I had a question about the relief nursery that we have in the past. It looks like we have ongoing 8,255. I don't quite understand why is it to 15,000? Is that an expansion? Is that going to be ongoing? Are we expanding our support of the relief nursery? Could you just explain that contribution?
Are you asking Nate? I think that my interpretation was that that's an additional ask on top of what we're looking at, and that it's two different asks in that document. If you look at the top half, they're asking for 25,005 something, And then that was on top of what they already receive of 130 something thousand. And
Right.
then, which is an increase in my mind, I believe is around 19% increase. And then the other ask at the bottom is for an additional, I believe, I don't have it right in front of me. I lied, I do. So the, let's see here, I have to find the right one. In that addition is like 170 some odd $1,000. That's also on top of what we are operating with. It's an ask.
Can I help clarify, Joe?
Oh, please.
From HSC.
Yes.
The amount at the top is the increase in basically a COLA almost. It's an increase in the cost in order to maintain the same services. The asks at the bottom are ones where the HSC executive staff or Steve asked the different agencies if they had extra needs or if they had needs. So those are extra asks at the bottom in that chart you're looking at from the different agencies.
So that's where
it's
you
an extra ask.
So that's where you were looking at the senior meal delivery?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
and also homeless outreach, or no? It was to be determined. Well, 50,000 is the ask for the homeless outreach.
And that was to go into the TAC program. That was an ask for the TAC program.
Okay.
Chair, we actually have a member of staff from Lane County on the call that is available to answer questions if that would be helpful.
Oh, good. Is Steve there? I hope.
Yes.
If you'd like,
So
I
Sherry,
can unmute Alexandria Dreyer now.
Oh,
right. I think let's before she comes on, let's make sure that if there's other panel or committee members have questions relating to this, they can get those out, or we can ask as she's on. Yeah, but I want to make sure all the committee members get their questions answered pertaining to this ask.
Okay.
So we can go ahead and bring her on, and she can address what Sherry has asked, and I too have multiple questions.
Hi everyone, this is Alex Dreer. I'm Lane County staff and I help to staff the Human Services Commission. So in regards to your question about the parent education in-home outreach, where the current contract holder is Relief Nursery, this is an additional request of $8,255 for ongoing funds. The program prevents child abuse in Springfield through bilingual parent education and home visiting. Currently 10 Springfield families are served annually. There's really high demand for the program. The $8,255 does include ongoing programmatic costs with the increase in costs to deliver the historic level of service to maintain the service at 10 families annually. And then there's an additional ask of one-time funding of $15,000 to double the capacity for Springfield and serve an additional 10 to 15 Springfield families, because there is a demonstrated need to serve more families in Springfield specifically. And while the 2% anti-poverty program overall increase, Lane County has dedicated a 2% increase to their programs. We've asked the city of Springfield to increase 2%, and we're asking the city of Springfield and Eugene to increase 2% overall to help with inflationary costs, essentially. But the specific breakdown of what it costs to maintain service level for parent education and home outreach Relief Nursery is $8,255.
Okay. Corey?
Hi, Alex. This is Corey Rodley. I have a couple of questions that I just wanted to get a better understanding of this. One is, how many years has this kind of partnership with the city been helping to fund this program? That's one. And the second, around that $15,000 additional ask, is that anticipated to be specifically around expansion due to the pandemic, or is it just the beginning of an expansion that's expected to go on?
Thank you, Corey Rodley. I do not know how long the partnership has been going on. I've been with Lane County for 2.5 years, and we've funded that program that amount of time, which is not very long. And to my knowledge, for a while before, this ask and recommendations came prior to the pandemic. So this is from during the last quarter of last year, the Human Services Commission heard from different community partners about what the needs are that they're seeing, and we asked them specifically because HSC funds have been flat for many years, which essentially when they're flat, it's not even increasing with inflation, so it's actually regressive. And we asked providers how much longer they could do that and still provide the historic level of service. So for that program in particular, it's serving 10 families, and they indicated they could not move forward with the same level of service.
Thank you. And you said it specifically it's a bilingual program, right? Spanish?
Yes, that is a bilingual home visiting child abuse prevention program.
Thank you.
Okay, we have other committee members that would like to ask questions in regards to the HSC request for funds. Okay, Sherry, go ahead.
Well, I just, I'm not quite sure I'm understanding what is the expansion we're looking at. What has been our contribution and what is the total expansion? Because I'm seeing the 40,000 and the 50,000. Are those additions? That's $90,000. Or is it coming from a different fund? Are all of these costs coming out of general fund, or are these CDBG or home funds? That's my question.
And I can answer some of them. So historically, 15% of your community development block grant funds are given to the Human Services Commission for social services. And so those go into the Human Services Fund. And we fund anti-poverty programs like the ones which are specifically called out that occur in Springfield. And your other questions, sorry. Oh, the 40,000, these are all additional budget requests that came from the Human Services Commission from the providers and staff. So the requests of, for example, senior meal delivery, 40,000 would create a new route to serve an additional 25 seniors in Springfield, and Lane Council of Governments manages that program, and they have identified for quite some time that they need to expand to another route in Springfield. There's a high demand, but they don't have the funding for it. And anything marked in ongoing costs, that's because it includes some staff costs, and we would not want to hire staff for, say, just 1 year without thinking that it would be an ongoing cost, because we'd be hiring staff to maybe have to let them go. So one-time funds are direct service funds in general, and ongoing costs means it includes some staff time.
So Councillor Moore, to answer your question, they would come out of the general fund. And I'm going to read something I have from Sandy Belson. And that is, so the 40,000 for the senior meals and then the HSC contributions, these aren't part of the current CDBG action plan. So they would be general funded. However, there is the potential for at least the senior meals under the increase in CDBG funds under the CARES Act. And that is something that Erin Fifield could weigh in on if she is present. So that's something where we might be able to find an alternative funding source.
Let's say, so the overall the overall ask is 126,000 additional. Is that what I'm understanding?
I don't have that number in front of me. So if someone else can speak to that, I would like them to come up on the screen.
So
it can't come up on the screen,
right?
But
thank you,
you don't have to approve all of them. You can look. You can pick and choose. You can decide you want to approve one or the other, or two or three or whatever. But it's not a blanket ask. You can differentiate between them if you want to.
Right. I've asked Neil to bring that sheet up from HSC so people can all see what we're talking about. And then at the top of the page, as you can see, that they're asking for $25,557 on top of their normal $135,252 as a apparent cost of living increase, and which is percentage-wise a 19% increase. And then if we can scroll down, Neil. And this is the line items we've been talking about. I've had difficulty understanding these, what's ongoing, what versus one time, but it looks to me like the total is $172,795. That's my understanding of it, and I've got several concerns in regards to some of this. Number one, I have a concern about a 19% increase for just as a COLA increases to me is very high. And as far as the senior meal delivery, frankly, I'm kind of surprised that these agencies hadn't come to us as opposed to going this direction. So I would hope that if they had some specific needs, that they would have come to us for funding. So there's $50,000 that for homeless outreach that doesn't have a contract holder. And apparently it's something like a program that Eugene does where I think Nate could probably describe it, or someone else can describe it better than I can. And then the community service center through Catholic Community Services. I think some of these things should be referred to the CDBG program and go through that as opposed to just ask from our general fund. So I'm looking for comments on that, Sean.
Yeah, maybe I have a process question here, Nate. Like in June, we're gonna have a budget committee budget work session at council, right? Where we're gonna get the first real big projection about what we think the revenue is actually gonna look like.
Yes. So originally we talked about early fall. I've started to talk about June, thinking that fall might be too late, but really that's going to be up to you when you're ready. I think we're going to start having good preliminary projections come mid-June, and it might be worthwhile to meet just so that we can, if we're going to take action, we can take action beginning at the beginning of the fiscal year.
So my preference would be to see the initial financial projections, as early as we think they're reasonably good, right? Because I think that's would inform a bunch of these asks, and some of them are really good asks. Some of them, but I think that's going to guide the conversation. So like my preference with the whole HSC ask would be essentially to sort of pump the discussion until council meets and sees the first big, like, what is the financial situation going to actually look like? Because I know the state's projecting they're going to have to cut 17% out of their budget. I don't think ours is going to be that bad since we don't use income tax, but right, that is going to be a sense that helps us guide whether or not what to do with these asks.
If you would remember from my presentation last Tuesday, our preliminary projections right now, best case scenario, we'll have a reduction in our general fund in the neighborhood of about 1.5 million, worst case scenario 2.5 million. So those are the numbers we're working with that will be truing up come mid-June.
So, but the budget as it exists today is already a general fund deficit of like $1 million. Maybe it's 900K.
Well, and that's not uncommon when you have a very healthy reserve, where sometimes it makes sense to draw it down. Also remember, in there is a $500,000 transfer over to the capital project fund into a reserve. That essentially is savings. So I typically don't think of a transfer to savings account as a cost.
Yeah, I think that's fair, right? Like, it's not, there's a little bit of deficit in there and the structural deficit in there, and some of it's moving money around the reserves. I've got a big set of questions here, but my first preference, Joe, would be like, I think we should just take this and like revisit it in June before we give anybody, any sort of guidance whether or not we're willing to do that, because then we can actually kind of look at the actual financial picture and say whether or not we're going to have enough funding to do that. So I do have a question, Nate, and maybe we don't know this, right? Like if for employees that live in Springfield and work in Eugene, they're subject to a public safety tax, payroll tax. Is that correct?
That's my understanding, but I'll be honest, I'm not completely up on that. I know that that was one of the issues when they implemented it. I don't know what the final outcome was, but I would assume that they are.
And some of that funding was allocated for their public safety program in Eugene, and some of that funding is making it into human services, right? So dollars that Springfield residents are paying, right? Like we're paying as a community, we're paying more into the human service structure. Is that a fair?
I really don't want to speak to that without verifying it.
That would be a question that I would want to know in June before we really got into this question, right? Because if we're having money taken out of Springfield residents' payroll, and then it's coming back into the human services program as a whole, I think that would be something that we would want to understand as well. Then the other thing, and maybe Alex, you can help us with this, like the request for the COLA increase is 19%. Is that, now I know the funding from an HSC perspective gets a little weird sometimes, so can you help me understand what, if the increase, is it because of time? Is it because, like, where did the 19% actually come from?
That is a question for Lynn. I think it's 2% over to the overall contributions, and it's it's only 2% a year, and then the total, like 25%, that's compounded over 3 years, I think.
So is it the funding is about going back and sort of back funding sort of COLA increases in the past, or is it because of how human services uses funding today, where like there's the local governments kind of give the discretionary money, so we're essentially funding a 2% increase over the entire pie for nonprofits?
Let me look at my spreadsheet and I can answer that.
Okay, that was the last of my questions. And Joe, I'm interested in talking about some of these things. I think the question about food delivery is probably a big pressing need that we can talk through. But I think timing matters a lot here.
Oh, this is Alex here with Lane County. The 2% increase, it divides because this is anti-poverty programs, so it divides the population up based on the population of people in Springfield who are in poverty. This is your 2% increase.
Okay, I'm still confused. So is everybody getting effectively a 19% increase, or is everybody getting, but our share is bigger because we have a higher percentage in poverty?
No, I can send some additional information to you. It's easier written out, and we have that information.
Okay, that would be perfect.
Corey, you're next.
Thank you. I just wanted to just put this out there as you look at this going forward. It sounds to me a little bit like this is looking at this as where things are now, and as in terms of anti-poverty work and funding for anti-poverty. And I think that that's only the importance is only going to grow, and that we're only going to see more people that are slipping into poverty. And so thinking about that in terms of not just where this is now, or trying to what the increase might be in comparison with previous years, but forward thinking, what is it going to take to do this work and to meet the needs of people and to try to keep them from slipping into poverty? So just that as part of that conversation when you're having it, maybe in June.
Good comments. Thank you, Corey.
Joe?
Yes, go ahead, Marilee.
I'm waving my hand again to say.
I think I heard you.
I just wanted to say that I agree with Sean, and I would like to see the HSC discussion tabled to talking about it later. I'm fine with that, but I think we'll have a better discussion.
Thank you, Marilee. And if anybody else doesn't have any comments, I was going to go ahead and piggyback on that. I agree. I think that this definitely needs more discussion. There's a lot of questions embedded in this. And I think it would be most appropriate for the council I don't want to make this go away or say no to it, but I think it definitely deserves further discussion at the council level, and so the council can make some final decisions regarding this. Sherry?
So I just was going to, and I agree that we do need to discuss it further.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to have input from the budget committee members about what their concerns or their opinions about this, since it was an ask to the budget committee. But we are going to approve it as the council, but I also feel like I'd like to have some input from the other budget committee members. So if they could do a written input or, however.
Yeah, and that's why I've been asking, if people have comments from the committee to definitely chime in, and like we see George here, so this is an opportunity for them to ask their questions. Go ahead, George.
Okay, I guess my comment is that there's a potential projection of $1 to $2 million reduction in general fund revenues. At least it's up for discussion. So I guess at this point, before looking at additions that might exacerbate that problem, I guess you could offer a motion that any of these additional requests or asks for general fund increases be tabled at least until June, or a better picture of general fund revenues is made for the next fiscal year.
So Nate, would something like that require a motion? I don't know if it would require a motion or not.
No action would not require a motion in this case.
Right.
The motion would be to add. So let me also be clear on that. When I gave you those numbers, some of those from that 1.5 to 2.5, some of that is a one-time impact. It won't be ongoing, but some of it is also going to be ongoing. And that's something we'll tease out and also have for you at that time.
Okay. Thank you. Good comments, George. Thank you.
Okay.
Sean, go ahead.
And just to, I guess, add on to that, Nate, is, well, I guess maybe this is for Alex too. I would be open to seeing a revision to the actual ask before June, to sort of clarify some, because there's really like two asks coming into this, and to answer some more of those additional questions that you're getting through this conversation. Because I don't ask is very clear at all.
And I'd like to add on to that, if we could, Nate, or whoever's going to respond back to HSC, is that you have the Community Service Center is asking for $59,000 with a $38,000 ongoing cost. So I'd like to see where some of that's going, or what exactly that's going to. More of a breakdown, I guess, to fill in between the lines. Is that pretty much what you're saying too, Sean?
Yes.
Okay. So
noted.
All right. So from here, it sounds like we have a consensus of tabling that for now and looking at it as a council, and basically just receive that as as information, and it would be looked at further but not addressed at this point. Do we need to do a hand count or just to reach a consensus, Nate?
It wouldn't hurt. I think you can just ask all those in favor of tabling, say aye. All those who oppose, say nay. If there's no nays, you're good.
Okay. So all those in favor of that recommendation, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And any opposed signify the same. Okay. Unanimous, Nate. So we have more deliberation. I would like to bring up, if there is any comments in regards to the page 24 of 27 of attachment 2 of the original presentation, which is the FY21 highlights. That's the page that we were I believe all of us were looking at in regards to additional needs that were the fiscal year highlights, which would cover the infrastructure system needs for the street fund, stormwater fund, sanitary fund of $775,000. And Fire and Life Safety had put in a $650,000 one time for equipment, et cetera. Part of that conversation was also I believe Sherry brought that up with the Olympic trials. And we also discussed the body worn cameras and the ADA upgrades and a handgun and sight replacement and Chamber of Commerce position, et cetera. So I'd like to, thank you for bringing that up. So I would like to start the conversation. Is any conversation or comments in regards to that top item of DPW with the infrastructure system needs? I think Brian Conlon talked about that in regards to creating a team that's going to be year round that will address roads and other issues. So that way we have that team going on a year round basis. Any questions or comments in regards to that line item?
Then Councilor Pisciani, if I could just quickly interject,
Please.
I see a typo. So for the, seventh item, I think, or eighth item, that CMO Chamber of Commerce, $25,000.
Right.
That is TRT. That is not
TRT,
the
right. Yeah, I remember that was commented last Tuesday, and it's TRT for sure.
Okay, excellent. Go ahead.
And any comments in regards to the DPW ask or the increase in that added to the highlights? How about go ahead, Sherry.
I just had a question. Is ongoing cost, is that for the 7 FTEs, correct?
That's correct. And that's the ones that's being filled mostly with those funds, the sanitary fund, the street fund that we had that measure with, and the stormwater funds. Those are not general.
So those are not general fund funding.
No.
Those already have the funds available. It's just a matter of putting them forward. So I just wanted to make sure that the public was aware that those were not general fund that we already are paying for out of the street fund. So
right. And on the right of that column, it has the fund source, and that's I think there's only a couple items out of the general fund out of this list, but it doesn't mean we can't address those expenditures. So
thank you.
You bet.
And Councilor Pisciani, I have one more correction. I apologize.
Oh, sorry.
I think it's the 5th item, the body worn cameras.
Yes.
Forfeiture funds. Those are actually marijuana revenues.
Right.
Marijuana funds. I think that's an important distinction because forfeiture are limited, marijuana are ongoing.
Yes. And plus the forfeiture funds are pretty narrow and restricted to what can be spent for, and the marijuana funds are broader.
Correct.
Yes. So then moving down the fire and life safety, we heard from the chief in regards to equipment that's in need to replace, and it's a safety issue. Anybody have any issues with that? I'm okay with it. And
we have in reserve, correct?
Yeah, there's equipment replacement reserve, right. And then DPW has a capital replacement reserve. It's a one-time fee, and for some reason I just drew a blank. Nate, can you remind us what that was?
Well, that was the one that Councilor Moore had spoken to, as well as the ADA. And while it's under DPW, that was actually put there by the budget team, and that is just a transfer into the reserve over there for future building, deferred building maintenance. And that would be for things like our HVAC system, if we ever needed a new roof, all of our city assets. And one of the things that, and not just us, most city governments struggle with is they're great at building buildings, but they're not good at taking care of them. And so we are starting to put that money aside so that we can address those future needs.
I think that was a council meeting. We had a council work session on that a while back, I think. Any comments in regards? Sherry, go ahead.
So just in relationship to that, one of the things that was mentioned about the ADA upgrades was that that's not covering what the need is, the 100,000, but that by putting in 100,000, we were showing that at least we were making an attempt to go. So I wondered if our attempt could be 50,000 rather than 100,000.
Well, again, that's a savings. That money hasn't been spent as for future projects. We very well could do that. My only thing that would caution you is that if you were to look at the need, it's very large. Even 100,000 is a drop in the bucket. And then the question is, if someone was to challenge us for not, adhering to ADA standards, how would a judge interpret that?
Okay. Well, so that's what so we're putting it aside in a reserve. Is that what it is? Or are we planning on spending it in this next fiscal year?
So right now, we don't have anything programmed for that. So it would actually, in fiscal year 21, it would be in a reserve. It wouldn't be spent. So those are not dollars then at that point that you couldn't in a future date say, we wanted to do this, that we had the best intention, but now we have these other needs and you could pull it back for some other purpose. It's not forever locked into that purpose.
That sounds good to me.
For street infrastructure, sidewalks, a lot of the ADA work that's being done is just being paid out of the capital project funds when they do that work at the time.
Okay. Corey, go ahead.
I just wanted to jump on this because I have strong, passionate feelings about it. And also, if I'm not mistaken, and I could be wrong, I think that there are some time limits and there are some expectations that municipalities are moving to ADA accessibility in those intersections. So I think that there might be some expectations for that to happen by some times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was my understanding too that the cities have got some parameters which they need to get these upgrades accomplished by. If I'm not correct, is that right, Nate? Or maybe Brian would know.
I believe that the work that was done on that was in our HR department, if I remember right. I think there is also a capital component, but for kind of the larger city needs in terms of buildings and being available and open to all individuals, I think that work was done through the HR department. So I agree with you, Corey. I believe that's something we're actively working on, and we will be addressing those timelines.
Good comment. Okay. So, and we kind of jumped over on the body worn cameras. I would like to propose to, as much as I really hate kicking a can down the road, because we have done with this for the last 2 or 3 years or more, is that I think, and based on what I've heard from the chief as to the timing of this and where the funds, the ongoing additional cost, of after we get the cameras, how much it's going to cost the city to maintain those cameras, maintain the data storage, and provide the IT technology or IT tech to be able to manage that data. I think that we need to push this down the road. I know that this council was pretty firm on having this as a date certain project in place by the end of this year. But I also know that me saying kicking it down the road is not me saying kicking it off the road. I know that the citizens are very, very adamant about that. We've heard that from our surveys, and we've also heard from all of council. And but I do propose we take that off for this fiscal year and push it out. So other projects, and that money's not going anywhere. It's a marijuana money. We can earmark it, but we need to have that money available for other things that may come up in the near future. And plus, we don't have this time and staff to be able to get this project rolled out. And I'd love to hear the chief disagree with me, but I think that's what I got. And as much as a proponent as I am of the body worn cameras, that's something that I just don't see how our PD can have it done and us be able to absorb that cost of that extra couple $100,000 to be able to have it rolled out. Gabriel.
Hi. I just wanted to make another comment on the body cam. It's as much as I would like to not incur another cost, especially one that's ongoing. I'm concerned that I believe there's some federal money that was coming with this that will go away if we don't invest right away. And I don't see the need going away or lessening to have just one more voice at whatever scene as a witness. I think the expectation is coming up more and more that there is cameras involved, and I think we we need to protect our police officers so that things can be seen from their point of view instead of only anybody but their point of view.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. There's nothing I can't disagree with you with in regards to the value. I think that I look at it from another perspective is that it's not something that's going to protect the public from the police. I think the biggest benefit for me is where the police cannot be wrongfully accused of things, that it will protect them. And believe me, that's super important. And I think that it's, again, it's something I really don't want to do, but I think that with the money, it's because it's not just 192,000. It's the staffing that's going to have to be hired on top of that. That's the kicker.
So some clarification, we applied for a grant and we actually just applied for it, Gabrielle. We have not been awarded any money. So we don't know if we will receive that grant. So there isn't any federal dollars that are at risk at the moment. Right. That also reflects a partial year implementation. That's not the full cost of the program. The full cost of the program is around $300,000 out of the police budget and another $50,000 out of the finance budget for an increase to the indigent representation contract.
And actually, if the chief can be brought up, we can. I think this needs some explanation, please.
Could I ask how much is in the marijuana fund, and ongoing, do we expect the same amount of money to come from the marijuana fund?
I think this last year it came in around 300,000, didn't it?
I believe, yes, in that neighborhood. And as far as its kind of future stream, unfortunately, Councilor Moore, our citizens like to smoke.
So I do have Chief. Are you on the line?
I don't think so yet.
Yep, I hear you.
Oh, you can hear me? Okay.
Yes. So, Chief, have you been listening to this conversation?
I have, yes.
So, I really want to hear your thoughts. Am I making any sense on my recommendation to push this out a year?
Yes, you are. You know, as Nate talked about earlier, you know, the projection of having a $1.5 or $2.5 million deficit is very troubling for all of us, obviously, and we're the biggest user of the general fund, and the ongoing costs for the body camera is roughly, as he said, about $300,000 per year, and so that's a significant amount of money. I always concerned if we start a program and then we have some significant cuts down the road and then we stop that program, we basically wasted quite a bit of money, and that's really concerning. Also, we're at the point in our budget that when we do have to make cuts, we are going to get into personnel. You know, we've done this a number of years over time, and so the idea that we're going to trade, the possibility that we're going to, you know, start a body camera system, but then end up cutting positions in different areas of the department is very concerning to me. So I realize it's something that we've wanted, the council has directed us to get, but it's not a cheap program at all.
Thank you, Chief. And yes.
Hey, Joe, it's Leonard again. I got to say, I share Gabrielle's concern about the delay in implementation on these body cameras. I know that there are many cities throughout Oregon that are implementing them now, and we've been given a directive from the state government on a certain timetable to get them in place. And I would like to consider adding them in this current budget.
Okay. Thank you, Leonard. Holly.
Hi.
Hi.
I agree with Leonard and Gabrielle as well, that I think they're really important. And I think that once the COVID impact is better understood, it might be on the table at that point, but I think this would be a premature time.
So it sounds like you think it'd be wise to push it back a bit for now?
No, I think it would be wise to continue forward as planned and discuss it at a later time when city staff knows more about the impacts of COVID.
Okay.
So the reconvening in June or so. So I think removing it at this juncture is premature.
Oh, okay, I get it. Corey?
Yeah, I'm joining in with this, and probably for different reasons maybe than some people have, but also I really agree with Holly that I think that if we're going to push other things, other expenses back based on and waiting to see what revenue looks like, I would argue that keeping this in the budget and then looking at that down the road is important, because I think it's something we've all kind of committed to, and for various reasons, but we're all very committed to it and want to see this in our community. So I also agree that it's premature to take it off the table.
Okay, thank you, Corey. Gabriella?
Hi, I just wanted to go ahead and clarify and add an additional thought. After listening to the chief, I'd like to say that if the choice is between staffing and body cams, we have to make the staffing choice. And that if there isn't currently federal funds on the line, that putting it off till next year seems entirely reasonable.
Thank you, Gabrielle. Sean?
So, and maybe this is a question for back to Corey, because I'm kind of listening to this conversation and I see that people are sort of kind of coalescing around this idea we're going to have this big, impact from COVID. But I'm kind of hearing that the recommendation people are making is leave it in for now, and then if you want to push it back based on what you learn about where your revenue is, then at least you're walking into that meeting sort of saying to the community that this is important enough that it stayed in the budget. Is that fair? Corey? Come back, Corey.
I'm here. Yes, I think it is. It's a matter of, that it's kind of the community's come behind and it's a priority, and that keeping it in the budget, we really know what the revenue looks like is, I think that says, yes, we think that's important and we are committed to it.
But given that what Gabrielle described, right, you think that there's room in the community that said, if the revenue comes in and it's really, really bad, right, there's space for the council to say, hey, it's more important to, at that moment, to kind of keep sort of police on the street and our service level up and push this back.
Yeah. Okay. I think it's both and, right? I think it's a premature, I think, for us to take it off the table. And then when you have a better idea of the revenue, and if it becomes that's the conversation of like, do we invest in this or do we invest in that? What I don't know enough about is if this is coming from marijuana funds, we're not necessarily funding positions out of marijuana funds, but it sounds like maybe this is a little more flexible funding that could be moved around. So I think all of those would be part of the decision making June or at a later date when we have a better idea of what the revenue really looked like.
Right, but I want to make sure I've captured in my head where the rest of the committee, citizen members is really kind of saying that people are behind the council if for some reason we're having to make, when it comes to making the hard choice in June, that says if we have to, we can push it out. But you would like us, if we can figure it out, to keep it in. Yes,
I would. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's arguing timing here. I'm not hearing anybody arguing that this isn't important, right? The council made this important in December, and I think everybody's sort of trying to figure out what does this whole COVID thing mean. So that's a good context for the conversation.
I think I need to add a little more context as well to this. We're only talking about funding it out of Fund 204 with marijuana revenues for the first year. At that point, it will move over to the general fund. The ongoing marijuana revenue has already been allocated to the public safety budget. We have some additional unspent one-time marijuana revenues that are sitting there that we wanted to use to fund it for this first year. So it is not going to be funded through marijuana revenues on an ongoing basis. it will come straight out of the general fund.
Right. I think Paul was, I had someone else in there, but Paul, you're the only one on the screen right now, so go ahead.
I shoved him out. I have that.
Apparently, you had to go that way.
Whichever direction it went. I appreciate everyone's comments so far, and frankly, it feels like we're just delaying making a difficult decision. I feel like if this is something that were to come off, it would be painful. I get the reasoning behind why this went in the first place. If we want to defer, that's fine. But I'm feeling like it's going to come off in June. So if we want to wait till June to make that decision, that's fine with me. But it would be on my list of things to come off if we have to make a difficult decision.
Thank you, Paul. And I think, did I saw someone else in there. George, go ahead.
Yeah,
Marilee, I'll get you in queue. Go ahead. I'll let George talk and then Marilee next.
Okay.
I would be in favor of leaving it on there, and with the acknowledgement that even if it was in the budget next year, it seemed like the police department was talking about it might take 6-9 months before they would even implement and probably spend any of this money. They would have an even greater idea of what their budget looked like for the upcoming fiscal year. And at that time, the decision could be made not to proceed with the project, and that money would just roll over to the next fiscal year.
Okay, thank you, George. Marilee, go ahead.
Yes, I was thinking similarly to George, and the other thing that was on my mind was one of the last comments that the chief made, and that was, and other people have mentioned it, staff comes first. So if it gets to the point of we're making a decision between the cameras and staff, having people on the street in the community is a lot more important at this point. Keeping the priority, keeping the importance in mind of the cameras. Staffing is still a priority over that.
Yes. Thank you, Marilee. We've had a lot of discussion around this, and if I can kind of pull a consensus that no one wants it to go away, including myself, I definitely do not want it to go away. That I think we all agree upon. I think it's just a matter of timing is what everybody is talking about. And I think in a sense, we're kind of talking about the same thing. I did learn that there's not a state law looming that's going to require these. So we don't have something like that we're faced against, at least this right now. But I do know that it's predictable that we're going to have a problem if we are to allow this to move forward this year as asked originally of the chief by the council. And so again, if it's predictable, it's preventable. And I would recommend that in a pretty much your consensus, and I'm going to pull a vote on this one just to get a sure fix on all the folks involved, that we take this off this year's budget until it can be reviewed again soon by the council, and let the council decide when they get a better picture after COVID-19 issues are more clear, that we can bring it back on anytime, especially through an amendment, through a budget adjustment, and easy enough. Is that right, Nate?
That is correct.
So that would be my proposal. So I'll go ahead and put that forward, or if someone wants to put that forward on their own, and I can call a vote on that. So
I can make a motion if no one else wants to, that at this point in time, we would remove the $192,000 from the proposed budget for fiscal year 21.
And I think
camera.
Anyone wants to second that? I'm not even sure we need a motion. I didn't know for sure on a process, Nate.
We're going to need a motion and a second and a vote to get it onto the errata. Right now, it's in the budget. We will need a motion and an approval to get it out of the budget.
Okay, so I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Actually, I got a process question here before Paul said. So,
okay,
this June conversation that we kind of keep coming back to is, Nate, is that going to be the basis for a designing a supplemental budget? So like if we voted yes right now, right, because we're concerned about the COVID impact, can we add it in June?
Yes, you could. Well, you would add it. You could give us direction to add it to the budget, and then we would add it in the first supplemental budget of the year, which happens around September. When we come to you in June, we can make changes without having actually removed the budget or added the budget, if that makes sense.
Right. So I guess I'm just trying to get my head around what we're actually what we're actually voting on, in the sense of, because if we pull it, right, the consensus is, no matter what I'm hearing, is like people want to come make sure we talk about it again in June, right? Like I hear Joe say that, I hear everybody say that, right? And so I'm going, okay, it does, if we get into June, right, like July 1's going to roll around, like none of this is going to impact the timeline if we said we wanted to do it this year, right?
No, I mean, there's no harm in leaving it there for now. There really isn't, especially as a split group. I think, George spoke to it. It's the timeline is January at the soonest. We still have the grant pending, so you will have information on that at a later date that might impact your decision. It wouldn't hurt to hold off, is I guess what I'm trying to really say. I understand the desire to sort of take some action now, but as we originally put this forward, we had completed this pre-COVID, and we are going to revisit you with projections and let's be honest, cuts. And we've already started to discuss it, and we'll be coming to you. So, and I'll just put it out there right now. I think it's worth saying, the police will have to put potential staff cuts on the table. I apologize for having to say that.
Well, and that's where I'm trying to sort of navigate around this, right?
But that'll be dealt with at a later date.
Right. But I'm definitely hearing that people want to hear the council say that this continues to be important, right? And what we're trying to do is sort of act in a way, like my preference is that we keep cops on the street versus, pursue the technology, knowing that we've got to get this done at some point. So I'm just trying to get a sense of like, okay, are we acting in a way that actually, just to act, are we acting in a way that actually moves the dial forward? Because I don't think in the next month anybody's going to start working on this. Like we're going to fund the grant, like apply for the grant, but I don't think anybody's going to actually do any work on it, right?
No work will probably be done until late fall at the absolute earliest. So again, it doesn't hurt really, because we're going to be back at having that hard conversation at a later date, and it might be an easier decision at that point than it is tonight.
So can I withdraw my motion at this point?
Yes.
So you can do, I'm sorry, Councilmember, you can do anything you want.
Okay, so it sounds like from Sean's clarification that withdrawing the motion would be appropriate at this time. That's where I'm at.
And then George is next.
Yeah, I would agree with withdrawing that motion. My understanding is the budget committee makes recommendations on this budget. The council will actually adopt it sometime in June, so they could probably make any changes they wanted to the budget at that time.
That's correct. Okay. Gabriela?
My biggest concern is if we pull it from the budget, do we have standing for applying for the grant if we don't have matching dollars already attached to it?
We don't have to have it in our budget necessarily to apply for a grant and put up matching dollars. And it's not uncommon to, once you receive the award, to then bring forward a supplemental budget that reflects your matching contribution as well as the award. So no, this would have no impact on the grant.
I know the human services budgets deal more with that. And then second, since this would be at least a first year funded with the marijuana taxes, what can those do? I don't understand. From what I understand, they can't just go straight into the general fund. What would they do if they didn't do cameras?
There are a number of things that qualify for within public safety. And a lot of times what we look for when we have sort of one-time dollars, and I believe the dollars that we have at this point that are sitting there are considered one-time, is we look for one-time needs. And if you were to bring up the chief, I imagine that he could discuss all types of needs that the police department has.
Joe?
Okay, yeah, I'm right here. Go ahead, Marilee, go ahead.
Well, I listened to everybody talk, and if my chalk marks are right, I think the majority of people said that they thought that it would be premature to take it to remove it. It doesn't restrict us from taking it off in June with the information we would have available to us in June. But my opinion and my feeling right now at this point is that it is premature to pull it. It does continue to show us support. We're going to apply for the grant, and come June, if it indicates to us that we need to pull it and push it farther out, that's okay. But I think we need to keep it in for now. And like I said, I was keeping chalk marks as people were speaking, and you surprised me when you made your statement, because I thought people were leaning the other way.
Yep. Thank you, Marilee. And what I love about this group is that the important thing is to keep an open mind, and that through the conversation is that I have thought about all of what I was thinking about originally, and I think that I'm not so keen on dumping it right now at all. I think that it makes sense to just leave it as is so we can take a look at it down the road, wherever that juncture is, and so that way it's still in queue automatically and it hasn't disappeared.
Sounds good.
Sean?
And just one clarification, right? Because if I'm making chalk marks too here, and that it would be fair to say that the budget committee, it seems like the conversation around the budget committee is revolving around protect service first when we get to the COVID impacts, and then once we've protected service, then do body cameras if we can.
That's my summation as well.
Okay, that's where I'm hearing everybody at too.
Right. So we don't have any motions on the floor. I think we have a consensus from what I can tell to just move forward. It's not a vote item. And looks like if there's any other comments, I think we should start entertaining some motions for the budget.
I'd like to make a comment.
Go ahead, go bring your camera up. There it is.
So I wanted to comment on the Chamber of Commerce funding for $25,000, the one time. It says one time, but it's been an ongoing, or at least it was indicated that it was ongoing, but the contract actually ends in June, and we would be renewing, I assume, under the same contract that we have now in place for $25,000. Is that correct?
Got a question for Nate?
Yes, for somebody. So it would be a renewal.
I was texting with my budget officer, and so I missed your question.
So the Chamber of Commerce, $25,000, would that be a renewal of the contract that is in place at this time?
It would have to be a renewal because the contract that we signed was a one-year contract.
Right. Okay. So, and I'm just speaking against renewing the contract, but that's just simply from the fact that I feel like we don't know what the COVID is going to, what's in the future. And that as I looked at the contract and understood that we're basically paying a half position for the Springfield Chamber of Commerce to what it says is that administrative staff support will include but not be limited to scheduling and hosting meetings. This is all for the nonprofit that is conducting research and preparing reports, establishing and maintaining a filing system, tracking tasks and progress on tasks, formal blah, 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 for the board of the nonprofit. And so it's all, last week when we talked about it, it was indicated that it was economic development, but it looks as if it is basically all related to an effort to develop and construct an indoor track facility in the city of Springfield. And I'm feeling like I'm not prepared to pay $25,000 to a person to keep that work going forward, since in fact we don't know where we're going at this point in time. And I realize that the indoor track was discussed in the city council as being a priority project in Glenwood, but my understanding was that economic development in general was a priority in Glenwood, and apparently we're not making any real efforts towards other kinds of projects. So everything else has kind of been put on hold, but this indoor track is being kind of pushed forward, or at least we're investing money in it. And so I'm making a motion, I guess, or recommending that we not continue the contract and that we don't pay the $25,000 out of general fund. Do I need?
Be clear though, it's not general fund. That was the correction I made early. It's TRT.
Okay.
Let's be clear.
Right. All right. Again, transit room tax is going to be, I believe, hit very hard this next year, this next fiscal year. So I don't see that we're going to have a lot of money in there to do anything, hardly.
Okay, is that all, Sherry?
Yes, at the moment.
Marilee, I heard you.
Yes, thank you. A couple things. One is that I think our $25,000 contribution is matched by the chamber. So I think that if I'm remembering right, that was a matching amount. So between the chamber and us pays for the position. I also understand that not only is Danny doing what she's doing, but she's also going to be writing for a grant for money as well. I'd like to comment on the Glenwood improvements. I know that there was a lot of emphasis put on all the the roundabout, all the thing around the roundabout and everything there on Franklin, with the expectation that once that was in, there would be economic development around that and along with the further improvements going west on Franklin. So I think there's a whole bunch of pieces that are in the lineup for improvements that are associated indirectly and directly with the track, which is also economic development improvement. And I think there's just a whole bunch of things that are all in line with each other, or in helping with each other. And I have to, my last comment will be, I have to look at both the letters that we've received from the chamber and from in support of going forward. I don't think we know. I don't think we're ready. I don't feel like we're ready at the point to say no, we don't want to do this. We made a commitment that we wanted to have a priority of pursuing it to the point of yes, getting to a yes or getting to a no. I don't feel we're at the point of where we want to pull support of going forward, applying for a grant, looking at we've gotten a lot of city support, a lot of community support whenever it's brought up in meetings and stuff. So I just don't feel comfortable not continuing with that.
Thank you, Marilee. George, you're next. Go ahead.
I just wanted to second the motion that was before the committee.
Okay. So we have further discussion. Sean?
Yeah, so I've got a couple of opinions here, and maybe Sherry, you can back us up and help me understand a little bit more. So this $25,000, right? Like, I kind of go back to the money's coming from economic development, right? Like, and that economic development relationship is really going to be critical to support, just broadly supporting how we're going to go forward from a business perspective, between the city and the chamber. When you look at I know that depending on what your opinion of the track is, and I like the track, right? Depends on how much weight you put on the SCDC letter. But I looked at the chamber letter and it was pretty compelling. And those are business leaders in the community saying that this is important for the city to do. And then I looked at the names at the bottom of the SCDC letter, and those are all critical folks, you know, in the community that we generally have a lot of respect for. And I keep kind of coming back to the discussions that we've had at council. We outlined the track is a priority in the fall when we talked about our economic development priorities. And now, you know, there's additional funding to develop it into an actual project. And I don't see any reason to walk away from this, because economic development long-term is where the city has historically put its efforts. So I would vote no, but I would be interested in hearing, like, what's the sudden reason that we're all walking back from this? Because I was at those council meetings and everybody was sitting around the table nodding their heads when we started this journey.
So I don't know if anyone else wants to speak. So I did see, for instance, I saw that Courtney's name was on this contract. And so I took it upon myself to call her and ask her about how, you know, what are we getting? What is the city getting from this contract? And she indicated to me that, I had also talked to Vonnie, and she told me that Vonnie was meeting with the city about economic development in general and the track specifically, and been meeting with Courtney on a weekly basis, I believe she said. And Courtney could not confirm that. She said that they've been meeting about COVID and business in general in the city, but not about this particular issue. My understanding is, yes, I did head nod because I do think the track, indoor track, could be a positive thing, possibly for the city, but I also think other economic development things could be positive. I mean, anything in Glenwood economically developing could be a positive thing. I am not convinced that the track is the sole most important thing that we go forward on, and yet we're not making any real efforts to go forward on anything else. And so that was my concern, is that this is specifically money that is being put forward towards the development of this indoor track in Glenwood. And I maybe it's one of those things that we need to discuss as a council more so than at the budget committee, you know, at this point in time. But I'm just, this independent contract surprised me. And when I just, you know, read a little bit more about what it says, it feels a little loosey-goosey to me that we're giving the chamber $25,000 to go forward with the track, indoor track, period. And I'm not sure that's where we want to put the money right now. That's where I'm at.
So, yeah, and I guess just to respond before, I love the webcam thing because it's like this popping, you know, portion. I guess I think that, right, like if you've got, I would think if you have questions about what does the contract actually say, conceptually it is a good idea, then maybe that's a different discussion than, hey, look, in the middle of the COVID conversation, let's walk away from economic development. And I think that if you look more broadly at the economic development conversations that the city has had, there's a whole long list of work that is being done around the track and everything else in the city that doesn't really is sort of being ignored here. And I just, like, we are doing the track, and we've got a whole set of businesses in this community that there are a lot of people are working to support. So I think it's important to at least acknowledge the fact that, like, there's a lot of work going on. So we got to also do the long-term game, which is support and develop long-term economic development in this community, but also support businesses. So, all right.
Corey, go ahead.
I'm just going to jump into the fray. I wonder if there is a possibility to have a conversation about art, because as the current contract exists, and it says specifically, here's the things that we're funding, and we're funding this particular nonprofit and this particular nonprofit has been working on the indoor track. If the goal is, as Sean says, to support economic development, then is there a way to support the chamber in a cleaner, less tied to a specific project way? And to look at what that might look like. So even if we were to say, you know, we're not going to renew this particular contract, we're not going to support it in this way, but we still want to support economic development, and we still want to support the chamber. And what is going to be the best way for us to do that? We look at what we're actually going to do. So I don't know if I don't think that's a budget committee decision, but it's a way to say, we're not necessarily renewing this contract, but we want to support the chamber in these other ways, and we're going to do it like this. It's a question.
Councillor Van Gordon, Sean.
Yeah, the chamber is our economic development partner. And then I think, I know that politically a lot of people here are, kind of talking and discussing about the track, and that's fine. That's why we have those conversations. But I would remind folks that we've had probably 4 or 5 conversations at council, and we said that we were gonna continue to support the chamber in this way. And I know there's concerns about it. There's a lot of really smart people that have written and given us public testimony to support this, and it would just seem silly to suddenly back away from it right now.
Hey, Joe.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead, Leonard.
Hey, it's Leonard. Yeah, I back Councilor Moore's opinion on this. I've been looking at the duties that the administrative these administrative tasks that are going to be financed by the 25,000, and it looks to me like it has a lot in common with the typical for the chamber, and I don't think it's really necessary at this point.
Joe.
Well, hang on, Mary Lee, you'll be after Gabriella.
Okay.
Go ahead, Gabriella.
So I just wanted to wait in here a little bit too. Economic development is always, or has been recently, a very strong way of doing business in Springfield. I mean, it's what we've pieces we've got to the table, the confidence we've tried to give our community in investing, that if we do something to indicate that we're going to pull out now from the economic development path we've been taking over the last several years over politics, I think it's going to destroy the relationships that we've been building for quite a few years. And we know that there's need for an event center. That's already been identified. There was 3 different locations, and truly Glenwood is the best location. It doesn't displace a whole community. This is ridiculous to argue over only $25,000 towards a position. It's obviously a small fraction of what most people are paid, and we can't lose a specialist that's been working with us for such a long time over potentials for maybe things getting pushed out a year because of the Olympic trials. We need to keep moving forward and show our partners that we're capable of making a commitment and keeping it.
Sorry to keep coming back here. I got an actual question for Nate, a finance question. How much money is it in the transient room tax fund?
Right now, we have a reserve, I think, somewhere in the neighborhood of about $1.6 million. That's at the end of, or projected to be at the end of fiscal year 20. That being said, we are going to take a significant hit in the transit room tax because of COVID-19. Fortunately, I told you that some of the impacts will be one-time and some of them will be long-term. The hit to TRT will be one-time. It will recover. So right now we're projecting for the final quarter of fiscal year 20 and all of fiscal year 21, the impact of shortfall of revenue, not total for TRT, but just for the general fund transfer, best case scenario, a decrease in about $580,000 in revenue. So that would be 5/9. You could probably easily turn that into the entire TRT impact. And then worst case, 730,000. So let me do that really quick.
Well, I don't, yeah, I mean, if you want to pencil it out on the back of your neck. But it's fair to say that there's enough money, given our current situation with TRT, that we can afford to continue to support the chamber and invest long term in tourism in this
Yeah,
area.
I would say that TRT has healthy enough reserve that it can continue to meet its ongoing operational costs, because it does have ongoing operational costs, as well as be able to meet certain smaller initiatives and projects. One of our goals in saving up a reserve to the tune of $1.6 million, though, was the intention to support a larger project with a larger sum of money. This impact will delay our ability to do something like that. But this $25,000 in the big scheme of things isn't going to impact that one way or another.
Joe?
Yes, Sherry's camera's on. Did you want to make a comment?
Yes.
Because I will shortly. So go ahead, Sherry, and then Mary Lee.
Okay, so what I wanted to say was to respond partially to Gabriel, that this particular contract is not an economic development contract. It is a contract that will provide the Chamber of Commerce to be used for the specific purpose of providing administrative support to the community's effort to develop and construct an indoor track facility in the city of Springfield. So it's not a broad economic development contract. It is specifically to support the nonprofit group that is trying to get this indoor track facility built. And that's fine if that's, if that's what we agree we want to use it for. I'm just saying, and I understand that this is peanuts. And as I said, maybe it's a discussion that we need to have. We've talked about the fact that this is something that the community is trying, this group is trying to develop, this nonprofit, that the city was not investing money. But then I see this contract and discover that, in fact, the city is investing money. Granted, it's not much money. So I guess I still would like to have a vote on whether or not we're going to pay the $25,000 to the chamber. That's where I'm coming from.
Mary Lee.
Yes. I just want to speak up on the fact that we need to be good faith partners with the chamber when it comes to economic development. I haven't seen anybody from the chamber recuse themselves that they weren't in favor of this. And I saw a letter come through with glowing support from not only the chamber board itself, but from businesses individually that want to see this at least go forward at this time. And we are investing $25,000 to help the process move along. And I don't see where that inhibits anything with economic development, or it disencourages the process of happening. It puts everybody on the same page. When I first came on council 10 years ago, we were talking about the Glenwood refinement plan and trying to get something going. There have been various committees along the way from the chamber and everything else that have tried to create something in Glenwood. This is the first project that actually looks like it might happen, or at least it's got a consensus of support. And I'm just really disturbed by this, since council made a decision, and now because one or two people have decided to change their minds, now we're going to pull our support. I'm going to flat out say it. I just think that's wrong. That council did not make that decision. Council made the decision to support it, and halfway through, two people are going to decide that they don't want to do it anymore, and so they're going to change their mind. I mean, I'm very frustrated. I'm very disappointed. I'm in full support of this. I'm in full support of going forward, and I'm in full support of the chamber and the nonprofit going forward. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, Mary Lee. George?
I just wanted to call a question for a vote.
You want to call it for a vote?
Yes.
I'm not ready yet. I'll let you know. I'll do that. I'm going to chime in here. I think I can't agree any more than what Mary Lee has said. I think that, number one, it is full-on economic development, and when you have the hoteliers in the area fully supporting a project that is not just an indoor track, it's an indoor sports facility that would host many different things for our youth and for our visitors and generate tons of more TRT money. We're talking about a $25,000 investment with the TRT money to get something that is going to be landmark for this facility, for our community. It has nothing to do with gee, this is a great building, let's move on. It has everything to do with our culture from across the river, across the freeway, of a sports culture that can grow. We did the Glenwood refinement plan, and it took us years to do that. And look how many millions of dollars we put into just the transportation structure, infrastructure so far to develop and economically develop Glenwood. It's critical that we don't shy away from any kind of development. And it's critical that we don't lose sight of what the council consensusly agreed upon, that this is what we're going to do. So as far as I'm concerned, 100% behind us. I think that it is amazing the amount of work that's been done for such a low cost, and that it stays, in my mind, it should stay right here and continue the way it's been going. So is there any more comment as pertaining to this expense? I have a motion and a second on the floor. I'm going to call for a by name vote from Nate. If you would go down the roster, please.
Councilor Pictionary, can
I'm a
you
roster.
yes would defund this position, no would leave it in, right?
So we would say yes as leave as is, a no would be to recommend a change or take it off.
That's not what the motion was. The motion was to remove it.
To remove it, right? So okay,
yes,
so
vote yes
then,
to remove it or no to leave it in.
that's fine. A no to not remove it, a yes to remove it.
Tell you what, to be absolutely clear, we'll have Neil Obringer do the call, and we're going to say either leave or remove.
There you go. That's better.
Luke Lundberg.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I'm just having technical issues here. Yes, I want to leave in the money.
Councilor Van Gordon.
Leave.
George Jesse.
Remove.
Councilor Moe.
Really hard for me to say this, but leave it.
Corey Rodley.
Remove.
Sherry Moore.
Remove.
Gabrielle Gudero.
Leave.
Councilor Stair.
Remove.
Holly Bauer Shaper.
Remove.
Councilor Woodrow.
Mayor Lee?
Unmute myself. Leave.
Paul Selby.
Leave.
Councilor Pictionary.
Leave.
7 votes leave, 5 votes remove. The motion fails.
Okay, moving on. Next, what we have to do, Nate, is now that we've gone through those items, is there any other items on the budget that are wanted to be discussed by the members? It sounds like the deliberations may be closing.
The library technician position we were going to remove.
Yes, we're going to need that the motion for that errata when we get to that point.
Yeah, that's written at errata. So I think we can go forward with closing the deliberations and we entertaining motions.
Well, no, I think we still need, I kind of consider this part of the deliberations. We need a motion to remove the funding for the library technician from the general fund and to add it to the gift, to Fund 204, the special revenue fund.
Oh, okay. Holly? Hi.
I was going to make a different motion, so should I wait and come back? after the library is.
You're up. Why don't you make your motion?
Sure.
Okay. I would like to move to add the programmed match and project description for the West E Street project back to the capital budget. And I was hoping that city staff could help with the account string and dollar amount for that local match, please.
Yes, so the page that I have my notes on, I don't have. Neil, do you have the amount and account string?
I do. The local match is $39,100. The expenditure would be coming from street capital in DPW, project number P41049, and would be coming from street capital reserves.
This is Corey Rodley. I want to second that.
Okay, it's been motion and seconded. I call for a vote. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed signify the same.
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries. So the next part, and 8 would be the making a motion and moving the library technician spot over. How would you like us to word that?
Yeah, I think you could just say, I'd like to make a motion to remove the quarter FTE from the general fund from the library technician position and fund it out of the special revenue fund.
Is that an ongoing or a one-time?
It's a one-time. When anything is funded through a special revenue fund outside the general fund, there's no guarantee that that position will have indefinite funding.
Okay, thank you.
I so move.
It's been moved.
Me.
That was Sherry. Sherry made the motion to move it. And do I have a second from who?
I'll second.
Mary Lee has got a second. All in favor signify by aye.
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 Any opposed signify by the same. Motion carries unanimously. Nate?
And I think that's it for what I wanted to make sure was captured. And it's really up to you if you're done with the adjustments to this budget.
Chair, we have one other additional errata that came from the MWMC board. I believe.
Oh, do we on that?
I don't believe we made a motion on that particular item yet.
Okay, I apologize. So for that motion, can you bring up that adjustment, Neil, so we know what we're doing?
I have it. I have it on my screen here. I may be having some technical difficulties having it show through GoToWebinar. Let me attempt to try that, or attempt that one more time.
Otherwise, we have it captured as the governing body for MWMC requested. So I think the motion could say essentially, I'd like to make a motion that we make the adjustment that the MWMC governing body requested.
Yeah, I can read the text that was provided by MWMC staff, if that would be helpful.
That would be helpful.
Sure, do it.
At the direction of the MWMC Commission at their April 10th, 2020 meeting, staff has made the following changes to the proposed budget for FY21. In the operating fund, there will be no increase to user fees for FY21. Therefore, the user fee revenue line item has been decreased by $1 million from $34,700,000 to $33,700,000. The transfer from operating to capital fund will be decreased by $1 million from $14 million to $13 million. In the capital fund, the transfer in from operating fund will be decreased by $1 million, and the capital reserve will be decreased by $1 million from $46,240,999 to $45,240,999.
All right, who can repeat that verbatim?
So moved.
Yeah. Who made the so moved?
That was George, Jesse.
So it's been made a motion by George Jesse. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
That would be Sherry that made the second.
Yes.
Okay. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed signify same. Okay, motion carries unanimously. So that errata is completed. Is there any more erratas? Okay.
None at this time.
Okay, I think now that we can entertain motions from the budget committee. Does anybody have their sheet in front of them?
I do. Do you want, I have 5. Are all 5 motions needed?
Yes.
Okay, I'm ready to read them.
So before you do, I do want to ask everyone present, if you have any questions concerning any of these motions, would you like an explanation from me?
Oh, thank you for that, Nate. I forgot we talked about that. Yeah.
So are those motions on the city, the budget committee instructions? Where do I find those motions? Oh, there they are.
Yeah. Attachment 36.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, I would suggest, Nate, that maybe could you just maybe talk through kind of what we're actually going to do here, and not wait for a question. I always am good for a good refresher.
Well, essentially, these are motions that are required for us to adopt a legal budget according to the Oregon State budget law. So the first motion is actually for actually forwarding the budget to City Council for adoption, is to forward the budget. The following motions are essentially to set our property tax levies, the first one being our general levy at $4.74 per thousand, and then the next two being our special revenue levies. The first one being our fire levy at 36 cents per thousand, and the second one being our police and court local option levy at $1.40. That levy also funds the jail as well. And then the final motion is our ability to levy additional dollars for payments on our debt service. We have 2 outstanding bonds, the street bond as well as a refunding bond that was actually used to refund the Justice Center bond. So essentially, these are just technical motions that essentially allow us to levy tax dollars as well as put forward a budget for approval by our council. Any additional questions? All right, I think it's back to you, Councilor Pictionary.
Okay. Thank you.
Are you ready,
Nate.
Joe?
I think so. Yes, ma'am. Go for it.
All righty. I move to approve the budget as proposed by the city manager with the following changes. We didn't make any, did we?
Oh, we did. Neil will read back the errata.
The errata,
okay.
Right.
The first increase or the first adjustment was the decrease in user fee revenue for the Metropolitan Wastewater Management Commission.
That's right. Okay.
The second adjustment was the reallocation of the library half FTE to be 100% funded out of the Gift and Memorial Fund from the general fund. And the third change was to add the local match for the West D Street project, project number P41049.
Right. So now ready for a second?
We need to vote on each one.
Yes, we need a second on this one, Joe.
Yeah. I'm calling for a second.
I second.
Sean called for a second on that, or I should say made a second on that motion. So all in favor of this motion signify by aye.
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 Any opposed signify same. Motion carries unanimously. Next motion.
I move to direct council to levy a property tax for the 2020-21 fiscal year at a rate of 4.7403 per thousand.
I have a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Sherry, I hear a second. All in favor signify by aye.
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 Any opposed signify same. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. I will entertain another motion.
I move to direct council to levy a special operating local option property tax for the 2020-2021 fiscal year at a rate of 0.36 per thousand, the fire local option levy.
A motion has been put forward. I hear a second.
Second.
And that was Sherry.
No. Gabrielle?
Gabrielle, thank you. I didn't recognize it first.
Gabriella.
Gabriella.
I'm sorry.
Gabriella. So yeah, if whoever's making seconds, if you could please give us your name because we can't see you. The motion has been made and seconded. All in favor signify by aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Any opposed signify same. Motion carries unanimously. Next motion.
I move to direct council to levy a special operating local option property tax for the 2020-21 fiscal year at a rate of $1.40 per thousand, the police and court local option levy.
I have a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second. Sherry?
Sherry makes a second. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed signify same. Motion carries unanimously. And next motion, please.
I move to levy an additional $4,198,287 for the retirement of the city's bonded indebtedness.
I have a motion. To hear a second.
Second.
I'll
Gabriella.
second. This is Leonard.
So I heard Leonard, so I'll take that one. So I have a motion and it's been seconded. All in favor signify by aye.
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 Any opposed signify same. Motion carries unanimously. Those are the only, any other motions? Hearing none, I would like to adjourn